Okay, in day 11, we're still on section 5.6, and this time we're going to be doing equations of perpendicular lines. So we learned in the last lesson that parallel lines are two lines that never intersect, and they have the same slope. But now we're going to deal with two perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines always meet at a right angle. This is a little symbol that shows a right angle, and a right angle is 90 degrees. So all of the angles, all of the walls in the room that you're in right now are perpendicular to each other, meeting at 90 degrees right angles. So let's look at this picture of the graph to see what's happening here on our coordinate plane when we have perpendicular lines. Well, it just so happens that these two have the same y-intercept, and that isn't always true. They could have different y-intercepts. I'll show you another one in a minute. But in this one, what do we notice? What do we notice about the slopes? Okay, so the slope of my first line here is 2, and the slope of my other line is negative 1/2. Well, there happens to be a really close relationship between these two. The first one's 2 over 1. The second one is 1 over 2. The first one is a positive one. The second one is negative. This is something that happens between any two perpendicular lines. Their slopes are what's called opposite reciprocals. The slopes are opposite reciprocals. So, perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals of each other. The word opposite means they're going to have the opposite sign. One's positive, the other's negative. One's negative, the other's positive. And reciprocals means that you're going to take them and make them into a fraction and flip the fraction. So the number 3, if the slope of one line is 3, then it's perpendicular, a line that's perpendicular to this would have a slope of negative 1/3. If I start out with negative 3/4 as my first slope, then a perpendicular line to this, I'm going to flip the fraction and change the sign. So it becomes positive 4/3. So every time you're going to flip and change. Flip and change. You're going to flip the fraction and then change its sign. So if I start out with negative 1/2, the line that's perpendicular to it would be positive 2. Just to do a couple more, if I start out with, positive 3/5, the line perpendicular to it would be negative 5/3. If you start out with a line that has a slope of 4, the line perpendicular to it would have a slope of negative 1/4. If you start out with a line that has a slope of negative 1, well, you think of that as negative 1 over 1. It's going to change to 1 over negative 1, but then it has to become positive. So negative 1, the line perpendicular to it, would have the slope of positive 1. Okay, so I'm doing the problem on page 294, which is example 3, and it says, write the equation of the line that goes through the point negative 3, negative 2, and it's perpendicular to the graph of the line with the equation x plus 4y equals 12. So it's important to note that this is a perpendicular problem, so their slopes will be the opposite reciprocal. We're going to flip and change the slope. And I have to start by knowing the slope of this line. I don't know it right now because it's not in slope-intercept form. So that's always going to be your first job. If the equation given is not in slope-intercept form, we're going to change it to slope-intercept. which means we have to get y alone in this equation. So I'm going to do so by first subtracting x from both sides. I get 4y equals negative x plus 12. Then, oops. Then I'm going to divide everything by 4. I'm going to divide all three things by 4. That'll give me y equals negative x over 4 plus 3. I'm going to fix this so I can see the slope. Put a negative 1 there. So y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3. Now, the important thing that I've figured out from that equation is that slope is negative 1/4. So my slope of my perpendicular line, this is the symbol for perpendicular, my slope of my perpendicular line, I'm going to flip it. I'm going to flip this, negative 1/4, and I'm going to change the sign. So it becomes positive 4. This will be my slope for the rest of my equation, finding my new line, and I'm going to have to find a new b, which again is what's going to happen in all of your problems. We need a new line that has a new y-intercept. So I'm going back to my y equals mx plus b. I now know what my slope is, y equals 4x, and now I'm going to find b. I'm going to be able to do it because they've given me a point, giving me my x and my y. So I'm going to rewrite this equation, y equals 4x plus b. I'm going to write down the point that they gave me, negative 3, negative 2, and I'm going to substitute that in for the x and the y in this equation. So I have negative 2 equals 4 times negative 3 plus b. Negative 2 equals negative 12 plus b. Add 12 to both sides, and I have